Hello, so welcome everyone to this internal tutorial on the TAP application assessment sheet. So as you know, internally, our World Secretariat teams are in the process of assessing the received TAP application forms. This requires a standard assessment sheet that will allow for comparisons between the applications. And so the following tutorial will be about this assessment sheet and how to use it. So if we take a look at what we have here in this Google Sheet that should be shared already with everyone. First thing to say probably is that the reviewer of the application assesses the application as a whole, meaning all of the different tabs of the application form, as well as the supporting documents. Now, all of these, meaning the application form and the supporting documents, can be found on Samba, in Carbon, Projects, tab COP21, Received Applications, and for instance, let's take a look at Reykjavik's application. So here you have the application form itself, as well as the supporting documents that were sent to us, as well as some additional information that was sent by the applicant, but more about that a bit later. So all of this information should be used when assessing the application. However, the assessment itself, and I'll show you how it's done a bit later, but the assessment itself is made according to the criteria that can be found in the TAP Overview tab. So the assessment is made on the basis of the entire application, but the method used for reviewing it is according to the criteria that can be found in the TAP Overview. So for those who are not that familiar with the TAP application form, the TAP Overview tab of the application form looks like this. This is a very important part of the application form, and this is where the applicant tries to demonstrate the transformative nature of the project that was submitted according to what we define as being transformative, meaning that the project has to be ambitious, cross-cutting, and inclusive. Thus, these three parts of the TAP Overview tab, and thus the reason why we are going to be assessing these applications also according to these criteria. Now, a little bit more information on this assessment sheet itself. So the first part here, of course, we have one column to tell us what is the status of the assessment, if it's in progress or if it's already done. The main assessment team as well. So here, for instance, for Reykjavik's application, we have put down urban planning and design as being the main assessment team for this application. And of course, these teams and the allocation of the applications within these teams, and yes, all this information can be found in this tab over here, Project Assessment Teams. But anyways, let's go back over here to the assessment sheet itself. So there's one column to say which team is the main assessment team. Then there's one column for the secondary assessment team to be appointed by the primary assessment team. So the main assessment team would say, okay, we as urban planning and design have already reviewed this application, but we think that the second thematic area is worth exploring as well within this application, so therefore this other team should also take a look at the application. And then there's all this basic information about the application. So the name of the city, the project name, the country, the region, whether it's a project or an action plan, what is the primary sector of the project. So this is of course very important because the primary sector of the project also will tell you who will be the primary assessment team. So secondary sector, and all this information, whether it's ICLEI member or not, whether they're CCR reporting, and whether or not they're part of another ICLEI project, such as Urban LEDs, for instance. And of course, a short summary of the project. Now, this is the basic information part of the assessment sheet, and this is the part that the TAP team, myself included, will try to fill out for all of the received applications, so that the other teams don't have to do that and can just focus on the actual assessment according to our point system. So that was a good segue into the point system. How does our point system work? Well, I'll show you how it works a bit later, but first of all, on the actual grades themselves, you would give 0 to a field that has wrong data or no data, even though there should be data. And this grade should be used very selectively and should always be justified in the comments section of the application, of the assessment sheet, sorry. Then there's 1, major improvements necessary, so that would be the lowest grade that would not necessarily have to be justified. Then there's 2, okay, but improvements are necessary. 3, good, but some improvements may be necessary. 4, good, it's promising. And then 5, that's exceptional. And again, this is the other side of this. This is the other extreme. It's exceptionally good, and therefore this grade should also be used quite selectively and always be justified in the comments section. Now, as I've written down here in this yellow box, the overall grades for each subcategory and category are calculated as an average of the different fields. So that's the sum of the grades divided by the number of fields. If a field is left blank by the applicant for a justifiable reason, meaning that the field is simply not applicable to the project, or there was unavailable information for technical reasons and that the applicant has informed us of this, then this field is not counted in the calculation of the average grade. Right? So this is an important comment. I'll show you in a few seconds or a few minutes how it actually works. But so if a field is left blank because it doesn't apply to the project, or if there's unavailable information and the applicant has told us that they did not fill this in because the information was simply not available, then you would not penalize them for this blank field. And how you can find out about this is that each time the applicant has sent us additional information about missing fields, then we've stored this information in their application file on Samba, usually in documents entitled additional information sent by applicant, for instance. And here you would see that Reykjavik explained that they could not fill out some of the data for whatever reason. All right, so this is important so that we don't penalize our applicants for no reason. Okay, now on to the review itself and the point system. So the point system is used to grade the transformative potential of the submitted project according to the 3 criteria which I told you about, which make up our definition of transformative. So that's ambitious. Okay, so that's the first pink area here. Cross-cutting. Oh, sorry, I have to. So ambitious, cross-cutting, and inclusive. So we will be grading according to these 3 criteria, like I said, that are also the criteria that can be found in the TAP Overview tab in the application form. So let me take you through each of these sections and show you a little bit quickly how you would be able to grade them. For instance, here, the ambitious section. So the projects that are sent to the TAP should be either first-time projects that will benefit a large proportion of the population, or existing projects that are scaled up to benefit a larger proportion of the population. So this is also reflected in the TAP Overview tab, where we ask what makes this an ambitious project. The applicant will choose whether it's a first of its kind or a significant upscaling. And then the applicant would describe here how it is a first of its kind project, or how it is an existing project that is being scaled up in a significant way. Now, this is described in the TAP Overview tab, but as I said, it should also be described by the applicant in the Project Profile tab, for instance, as well as in the supporting documents. So even though the questions are based on what can be found in this tab, you have to take a look at the overall application to be able to grade the application. But so the first question here was, it's actually a choice between these two questions. The first question here in the ambitious section applies to first of its kind projects. So how will this kind of project be the first of its kind in its jurisdiction and serve a meaningful proportion of the population? So if it's a first of its kind project, you would give a grade here. So you could give, for instance, 3. Something like that, if it's an average project, and if it's not a first of its kind project, but it's a scaling up project, then you would give your grade here, and you would grade each subcategory here. So is it a significant upscaling in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of renewable energy generation, in terms of greenhouse gas reduction, or in terms of the population served, all of these 4 subcategories. And by giving points here, 4 and then 3, you get an overall scaling up score. So what's important in this ambitious section is that the overall ambitious score is the answer to either the first question or this second question about scaling up. It is not an answer to both. You'll see that several applicants, unfortunately, have filled out the application form thinking that their project was both a first of its kind and a scaling up. So in that case, you would simply rely on the one that they picked here. If they picked their project as being first of its kind, then you would simply grade the project according to how is it a first of its kind project, and is it serving a meaningful proportion of the population. You would not be looking at the scaling up aspect of it all. All right, so I hope this is clear. So there's no average really here to be made. It's just that the overall score in this ambitious section will be the grade given to either of the red questions. So either this question or this question. But this question is, of course, an average of these subcategories here. But let's not forget about this section comment. This comment section, sorry, here. This is an important aspect of the assessment sheet. Here you would give any comment you feel you need to give about the application. And if you have used one of the very high grades or one of the very low grades, we would really strongly encourage you to explain why you did so in this in these comment sections. But you'll see that each of the main sections, be it ambitious or cross-cutting or inclusive, have these comment sections. So, all right, let's move on to the next big section. So that's the cross-cutting section. So this one is a a bigger section, there's more information here that has to be provided because for us, our definition of cross-cutting involves seeing how the project affects people, the place, meaning the environment of the local government of the applicant, and the planet. So there are many subcategories here in this section of the assessment sheet. So in cross-cutting, we'll be looking at how different communities will benefit, how different types of resources will benefit in terms of their management, and how the project contributes to subnational, national, and global sustainability goals. Now, for a quick example of how to apply the point system here, so if the applicant can demonstrate that the submitted project will benefit the local environment in a significant way, we would give maybe a 4 here, a 3 here, a 4 here again, maybe, oh no, maybe not a 5, that's maybe a bit too much, a 2 here, 4 here, and then a 4 here again. And then maybe, okay, 3, 2, 2, and then other, we'll leave that blank. So the idea here is that the overall place score will be an average of all these scores, of all these grades, and if one of the fields was not filled in, for instance, if the other field was not filled in, then the average would not include this field. So you would not divide the sum of these numbers by, I think in this case it's it must be 8 or something like that. You would divide them by 7. Same here, if this field was simply not applicable to the project or was not filled in for any relevant reason, then you would not include that in your average. So I think that's very important to take into account, so that once again we're not penalizing anyone. All right, well, okay, I'll just leave those numbers maybe there for now. Okay, take them out here. Okay, so we gave them pretty good numbers here in terms of the environmental impact of the project, and maybe we can give them really good numbers as well on the subnational, national, and international SDG goals. So maybe we'd give a 5 here, 4 here, 3 here, and other goals maybe 2. Okay, so that would create the average planet score right here. So that's all of these divided by 4. And once again, if this was not filled out, then you would divide by 3 and not by 4. Okay, so that's yet again something that's quite important to remember. So they did pretty well here on the planet section, pretty well on the place section, but maybe in the people section they got really low scores. So they didn't really, throughout their application, they did not manage to prove that they were serving the community as a whole. They'd get a 1. They didn't really prove that they were serving the urban poor or any disadvantaged community. So they would get low scores here. This would mean that they would get a low overall people score here. It would also mean that probably in the people comment section you would explain why you gave such low scores. Now, so there was the people section, the planet section, and then the people section, the place section, and the planet section, and those are all subcategories of the cross-cutting score. And so the overall cross-cutting score, you will have guessed it probably, will be an average of the 3 different scores. So of the people score, the place score, and the planet score. So that's how you would get an overall cross-cutting score. Right. And yet again, for each of these subcategories, like place, planet, and people, there are comment sections. So remember to fill those in. Now, maybe we'll go through a bit quicker on the last big section, which is the inclusive section. So this is to see how and if the project encourages cross-departmental coordination for effective implementation of the project, if the citizens and local stakeholders are actively engaged in the project, and how the project fosters collaboration with other levels of government, be it the regional level or the national level, and of course if the private sector is involved in some way, one way or another. So yet again, the same system. So you would give scores to these subcategories that would lead to an overall city administration score, and you would do that for all the other subcategories, and that would lead to an overall inclusive score. And yet again, there are the comment sections here. So for instance, if the applicant can demonstrate that the submitted project is actively involving local citizens, for instance via the creation of citizens consultation panels or the involvement of several local NGOs, if it can prove that the business sector is involved, for instance by active consultation of the local chamber of commerce or direct involvement of private sector companies, as well as different levels of government, then the reviewer would give a very good grade in all of these sections, which would lead to a very good overall inclusive score. Right, so I hope that was helpful in clarifying how the point system works. So that's pretty much it. So like I said, these three main criteria are what we're looking at in all of these projects. Yet again, I really want to say this again, that the application though has to be reviewed as a whole. So you have to look at all the different pages to see what kind of information they've given that could help show that it's a cross-cutting or an inclusive project or whatever it is. So you'd have to look at all the different fields of the application form as well as the supporting documents. Right. Then there's just one last question here for you. As an initial reviewer, of the applications, on a scale from 1 to 10, how bankable is the project? And please explain your answer. So this is, I think, quite self-explanatory. The idea here is, if you were, say, a financial institution, would you support this project and why? All right, so you try to answer that question here in this section. You would add your initials here so that we know exactly who did the initial review. And then there are some qualitative assessment questions, but I think that these two last questions will be dealt with one of the secondary assessment teams that can have a more cross-cutting vision of all of the projects. For instance, looking at more of the regional analysis, of the projects, looking at how well the projects fit into a local or regional or country context. So these are questions I think that would be more for the secondary teams to be looking at, so you don't have to, I think, at first at least, worry about those. Right, so I hope this tutorial was useful. So as I said, you will find this application assessment sheet in a Google Drive that has been shared, I think, with several people. And if you have any questions, any problems, anything that's not clear, just contact me. You can call me, whatever. Come see me up here on the 3rd floor. We'd be very happy to see you. We like seeing people, and yeah, and that's it. And so as a quick reminder, We would like to have as many assessments done as possible by next Tuesday, so that's Tuesday 22nd. We will be having an assessment meeting Tuesday afternoon to talk about any difficult cases that we would have encountered during the assessment process, and then hopefully by the end of next week we'll have everything done. So just right now I want to say thank you to everyone for getting involved in this assessment process, and talk to you soon.